Tom, I always wanted to say welcome to my YouTube channel. We're rolling. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dream City podcast. I'm your co-host, Janae Dill.
And I'm Tom Sherwood.
Today, we have a very special guest. A long time, he used to be a big radio guy. He then became a big TV star on Channel 4. NBC4 reporter Mark Seagraves is here. Mark, how are you
Thanks for
doing?
having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be on the Dream City podcast, sponsored by Spotlight DC.
That's right. Supported by Spotlight DC. We're the Dream City podcast. And where are you today, Mark? That's a beautiful backdrop.
This is my home in Calvert County on the Chesapeake Bay, the western shore of the Chesapeake Bay.
But you cover the city pretty much every day, closer than most people, actually.
That's right. Well, I've also have lived in the city for just about my entire life.
And we're glad to have you on. Today, it's a big episode. We're going to talk about a much talked about profile in the Washington Post behind the scenes of the Mayor Bowser and Trump administration relationship. Later on, we're going to talk about Kenyan McDuffie and some movement there about the mayoral race that we're all waiting to kick off. And later in the show, I talked to my Axios DC colleague, Mimi Montgomery, about Mar-A-Lago face, how plastic surgery is changing in DC with the new influx of Trump officials and MAGA Republicans. But first, let's talk about this story that was in the Washington Post, written by Jonathan O'Connell, one of the sort of great reporter. He's one of veteran DC reporters. And this was
and a beast on the basketball court.
Yes, I've heard a little bit about this. This was actually talked about, whispered about a little bit. He was following the mayor for several months, and I had caught word from a source that this was a profile the Post was working on. We were all kind of waiting to see what was going to get published. It came out this past week.
He had the important thing is he had background access. He was in the room where no reporters are allowed to go normally.
And he got interviews with Chief of Staff to Trump, Susie Wiles, who is a very private figure in the background. That was a big interview that he was able to
She normally talks only on background.
That's right. Well, what were some of the takeaways you found, Tom? And then I'm interested, Mark, for you to jump in as well.
Well, very briefly, I think Jonathan's story laid out how difficult it's been for the mayor to be what she calls strategic and try to stay in be very narrowly focused on not irritating President Trump where he might do more to the city, but also not looking like she's caving into him. I think that comes through in the story where she has worked very hard. I think some of the story about her socializing with some of the White House staff was bad for her. And I don't think it emphasized enough what she has done about ICE. She has complained about ICE. She's called it a terror and a horror. But it's still, and the feeling in this city is that she has not been tough enough there. And in this Jonathan story, one last point, he talks about how she met with the council members, and they were very upset about cooperating in any way with Trump. And she said, well, if you want, we'll all stand on the front steps of the Wilson building and we'll resist Trump, but we'll be risking home rule.
Yeah, it's a great piece by Jonathan, and a lot of great access and a lot of details, a narrative that we pretty much knew about, but not with this kind of detail about these parties and who was talking to whom, and the tunnel, right? Turning on the lights in the tunnel and getting the graffiti off this tunnel.
Just for Trump.
Just for for the president, because that's his commute out to out to Andrews. It was a lot of insight and granular detail that a lot of us, like the three of us here, really thrive on and can devour. I know people around the mayor were concerned that maybe it didn't make the mayor look as good, or maybe it made her look too close to Trump and his people. But I know Tom and I talked about this. It was a very long article, and I'm guessing some percentage of the people who read it did not read the entire article. And in fact, I was at a small party last night with DC residents, and this article came up, and they started talking about it in a favorable light. Like, yeah, we get it. She's in a tough place. This is what she's had to do. And I asked them all, how many of you finished? There were 6 people there. None of them had finished the article. They all intend to, but they hadn't added stuff the other night. And so I don't know that everybody got all the granular stuff that we did. They should finish the whole article. It's the point of, going that deep into something. But I think for people who want to accuse the mayor of being too cozy with the Trump administration and not pushing back enough, this will add fuel to that narrative without a doubt. And I would just give a little, since he gave us so much color on the mayor, I'll give a little color on Jonathan O'Connell. When we first got wind that Jonathan was doing this, we being the very close DC press corps, Jonathan, there was a big press conference at MPD headquarters, and all the press were in our seated, arranged areas behind our TV cameras and whatnot. And the mayor was going to come out with the chief and I believe the deputy mayor to address us up there. And at the far end of the room is where the mayor's staff was gathering. And that's where the mayor eventually emerged from. Well, from that side of the room with staff emerged Jonathan O'Connell in this
He was
cluster.
great insight.
And look, we all know him. We've known him for many, many years. But he's also a guy kind of sticks out. I mean, just you see him. He
Tall
doesn't
and
blend
kind of
in.
redheadish. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me
And
just tell
so-
you very quickly before we get too far on this. He sent me a text apologizing for being unavailable when I was trying to reach him over the last few weeks.
Yes, we all reached out to him. Hey, Jonathan, and he said hi there, but he was like, he wasn't asking any questions during the press conference. He came in the same door as staff. And so, we all figured it out and people started telling us. So we knew going forward. And I will say, I think some of us had some fun with it, poking the mayor's communication staff about, even though we knew, just saying, is Jonathan O'Connell working for the mayor now? What is, he keeps showing up from the staff door for things. So
Well,
I
one
got
of the
one more. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
one of the details you broke, I'll set this up. But you mentioned the socializing with the Trump administration, with the mayor and the Trump administration. A day before Trump's order expired, O'Connell wrote, Wiles invited the mayor to the White House for a private meet and greet on a patio outside of her office. The mayor kind of wrestled whether to go to it or not, and she finally ended up saying, well, this is a chance for me to talk about DC issues in front of the White House. I need to go, basically. And eventually, at that meeting, Trump walks in. He says DC is finally safe. Homicide stats and carjackings had gone down during that takeover. And Trump says, quote, it's so great to see everybody here together, according to Wiles. Quote, the mayor has been doing a great job. And then he shakes hands with Bowser. And this was just before Trump went to that dinner at Joe's Seafood, just a few blocks away from the White House. But this was some of the detail that Jonathan O'Connell found in the story.
I'll tell you one thing about the story. Now, it'll be my last comment on it is I think the mayor's office and some of the people who support her didn't like one thing about the story, and that is the word appease in the headline. There's no way you can use the word appease in a positive way.
Well, this is the politics of this, is that if she runs for reelection, this is her case that she's trying to make to voters, that I had to work with the White House to forestall the worst from coming upon the city.
Yeah, well, she had that meeting with the council members. That's another good, the meeting with the council members where they were upset. Some were, I think the story said they were angry that Trump was doing this to the city and that she needed to be tougher and all that. And she kind of laid it out. She said, okay, well, if you want to stand on the steps of the Wilson building, we'll all get together and we'll resist the president, but we'll be risking home rule. And at that time, no one suggested that they do some kind of massive protest. And I've asked that on the Politics Hour on WAMU. Anybody who comes on and say, what would you have done differently to keep the home rule in place?
Let's talk about the needle that we introduced last week. The Will Bowser run for a fourth-term needle. Where is it pointing now? Last week, Tom, you said 60%. It looks likely she will run for re-election. Where are you at now?
Just to be accurate, it was 55 to 60%.
55 to
So
60.
it's
This is a very
unchanged.
scientific, very
Within
scientific.
it's within a 12, 14-hour period, one council member privately told me that the new word was the mayor was going to announce between Christmas and New Year's that she's not running. And then in that same period of time, a council member who had recent interactions with the mayor said she's running. So we'll leave it there.
So where's that
So there are
50% or
13 council members. Let's figure out who's talking to
You're not
Sherwood. I
going to
mean,
know
No,
who
no,
they
no, no,
are.
no, no,
I
no. We're not revealing
I'm an
sources.
equal opportunity person. I talk to all council members.
Mark, do you want to give a percentage?
I do not.
I don't either.
I'm a reporter. I cover this, and I will also just tell you, I am horrible at it. I am absolutely the worst at guessing the odds on who's going to win or lose any type of race or who's going to do any of this. So
Me
I'm
and
not
Mark
your
are
story
objective reporters. Tom can add
Oh, well,
some
there's no
analysis.
objective reporter. Seagraves, let's get Seagraves to talk about his story where he talked about the potential well-known candidates for mayor last week.
Mayor Bowser, maybe more than a week ago, I asked her, she was kind enough to, entertain my question, will she or won't she run? When will she announce? And I said, look, there'd been speculation, there'd been reporting by Axios, by WAMU, that, there were candidates lining up, Janice Lewis George and Kenyan McDuffie, but everybody was kind of, waiting to see what the mayor was going to do. And that's how I posed my question. And the mayor said, nobody needs to wait on me. I'll announce when I'm ready to announce, and I'll tell the public when I'm ready to tell the public what I'm going to do. But we know last months and months and months ago, she said to the press that she was going to announce in June. So we've kind of been, this has been a delayed response because she had the commander's deal come up. She had the federal takeover, the police department come up, a lot of things that prevented her
budget.
from
The crazy budget.
making her decision. And so, she's up there. And then, you've had Janice Lewis George, who as recently as a few days ago told myself and Martin Astermule, she's considering, was the word she kept using, considering, I'm considering it. And then after the third time I pressed her on it, she said she would make her decision known soon, before obviously petitions are available in late January. And then McDuffie was on the Politics Hour with Kojo,
And Sherwood.
and he said the same thing, that he's thinking about it. He talked about his thought process, and I talked to him afterward, tried to press him for a little bit more specificity, but he said he'd been approached by clergy and neighbors and ANC and people who want him to run, and he would not say, whether it was dependent on the mayor running or not.
Right.
Tom pressed him.
I do want to.
that.
I don't want to interrupt. I do want to let Tom talk about the interview, but just to lay it out, just quickly. Janice Lewis George says she's considering running. Kenyan McDuffie similarly is saying he is seriously considering running. I do want to highlight Kenyan McDuffie's who he is. We may or may not have gotten some comments from listeners. Thank you to our listeners last week that we did not talk enough about Kenyan McDuffie's record compared to Janice Lewis George's record. I'm going to try and do this in 30 seconds. Who is Kenyan McDuffie? He was elected to the council in 2012 to represent Ward 5. That's the community he grew up in. That contains a big chunk of Northeast, all the way from Rhode Island Avenue, New York Avenue corridors to the Maryland line. McDuffie was previously Judiciary Committee chair, where he led some criminal justice reforms. He was one of the early proponents of hiring violence interrupters. In 2021, he launched a bid to become Attorney General. That ended in disaster when it was ruled he could not run for the position because he wasn't an actively practicing attorney. He turned around in a huge comeback and instead beat incumbent Alyssa Silverman that year to become an independent at-large council member. He is now the Business and Economic Development Committee chair, and I think I'm out of 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's
but
well
he's worked
over
on the
30
RFK Stadium deal. He's worked on things like baby bonds to help families invest in to invest for their children. And so he has been called the next mayor for a long time because it seems like this is a position that he's going to want to aspire toward. And Tom, you talked to him on the WAMU Politics
Yes,
hour.
as Mark said, I pressed him on when are you going to announce? How are you going to announce? Are you going to run? Even if Mayor Bowser runs, a lot of people think that would not be a good idea in a three-way race. What are you going to do? When are you going to do it? What's your timeline? And he was just as coy as hell about it, and so he wasn't answering those questions. So I said, well, let's go to some issues. Policing. The mayor wants to go back to 3,800 officers up to 4,000. We have about 3,100. I pressed him as a former chairman of the Judiciary Committee. What number's in your head? What number? He says, well, I'll be talking to the chief. I said, no, I want to know what number. Do you think that's too little now? Too many? We have lots of money on overtime and the officers are burned out. He would not say. He would not give me a number. Even some of his supporters told me later that he's going to have to fix that answer. He kept saying our long-term solutions, we've got to, youth. He said he did vote for the curfew. He said that these are immediate issues where the curfew is needed, but that's not long-term solutions. And somebody said after the program, he's talking about long-term solutions like violence interrupters and better schools and all that. Well, he's been on the council since 2012. How long-term do we want to be? So I was, as a reporter analyst, I was frustrated with his answers, but I understood why he gave them all. And I'm just anxious for him to fish or cut bait and get into the race.
Yeah, I'll tell you the other part of this McDuffie possible mayoral candidacy is his being an independent, being a registered
Yes.
independent, and whether or not he would have to resign that seat in order to run as a Democrat in the Democratic primary in June for mayor, and that would trigger a special election for his seat, which costs taxpayers money and is a great inconvenience, and anything can happen. And I asked him specifically about that. He said it's part of his thought process as he weighs whether or not to run or not. He blames the Republicans in Congress for him having to change party affiliation for political expediency, but that's exactly what we have going on.
It's been in the home
Y-
rule charter since
and that's
1973. It's not like it's a
right.
surprise. Every
It,
lawyer I've spoken to who's dealt with the Board of Elections says he cannot remain an active independent council member at large and enter the Democratic primary for mayor. He will have to
so
resign his
that
seat.
just this just adds to what is going to go down in history as the craziest election year in the history of Washington, D.C. When you think about, we could have, depending on what wins what, we could end up in the course of 12 months having three special elections, right? I mean,
Mhm.
if McDuffie resigns and has to have a special election there, if Brooke Pinto, right, if she were to win, there would have to be a special election there. If Trayon White is found guilty next year and is forced to resign, we could have a special election there, all within the same 12 months at a time when we know we're going to have at least one new council member, right? Because of Brianne Nadeau, and who knows how many others, depending on how everything goes, and who could be our next mayor and who could be the next delegate to Congress. I mean, all of this is so volatile right
And you
now.
didn't even mention Anita Bonds at large member
Oh,
who told
thank
me
you.
this week. She told me this week that she is still talking to her friends around the city about whether she will run again for her at large seat. She's a
Wow.
Democrat.
That's
So
another
it
council
is
member.
a topsy-turvy world that we're in now. And I can't wait till January when they'll have to pick up petitions. We'll know who's running.
In Ward 1, I think it's the first time in 40 plus years there's an open seat with Brianne Nadeau not running for reelection. One person who is running for reelection is Ward 6 council member Charles Allen.
Announced
We
this
talked
week.
about, would he want to one day run for DC Council chairman? Would he want to run for mayor even one day? He's going to run for reelection, he announced this
I
week.
can tell you that sources I know who are close to him say that he did even consider running for the delegate seat. And as I joked to him, I said he could bite to the Congress because he lives up on Capitol Hill. He considered running for the chairman's race against Mendelson. He decided that was not a good idea. But if Mendelson, who says he's going to run but hasn't officially announced yet, if he were not running, and I think Charles Allen would jump into the chairman's race. So he did consider several things, but he decided he's doing well in Ward 6 and he's going to stay there for this cycle.
Before we
Now, we haven't heard from Zachary Parker.
yeah,
I'll ask you guys, have you heard from Zach? He's the Ward 5 council member who hasn't talked much. He's up this coming year.
I mean, I imagine he's going to run for re-election, right?
Well, he's speaking up a lot on the council. His acceptance when he took the oath of office, his speech sounded like a mayor candidate. What do you know, Mark? Anything?
I don't know anything there. I would just like to have at least one or two normal races this cycle that we can, kind
We
of.
haven't talked Christina Henderson, the at-large council member who's an independent. There's some discussion she will, in fact, run against Mendelson in November as an independent for the council chairmanship. That would be an extraordinarily interesting race. Although Mendelson is, despite his we get irritated with him, his behavior, how he interacts with reporters, he's pretty popular.
And the fact that he's late for every single public hearing that he conducts. The chairman is incapable of starting a hearing on time, no matter how many hours he has both. That's just not just the press, because we're getting paid to sit in
It's
that room,
true.
but it's the public. It's sometimes
Yes.
senior citizens and disabled people
Yes.
who come in to testify, and they're waiting in that hallway. They wait in their seats sometimes for hours so that they can get a
Yes.
seat in what is not a very big room. They're not allowed to bring food or water into those rooms, which the chairman and the council, they come from a catered breakfast in the very next room,
Next
and
door.
then they next door, and then they find their way in to these hearings, and sometimes they're hours and hours late with no apology and no explanation, and thus endeth the rant.
The DC Council needs to start starting on time. That's what we want
It's
here.
not going to happen.
Mark, I'm gonna let you go. It looks like the
What?
Chesapeake Bay is
We're throwing
That's
him
it?
off the program.
That's
Good.
it. I'm out. Man,
I thought you wanted to go. I thought you wanted to go
sponsored by
whale.
Spotlight DC, which does such great work for journalism here in Washington. And you got to love Spotlight
It's
DC. I thought I'd
I've-
be invited to stay on the entire show, but I get how it is.
I've
That's
donated
okay.
to
hard
Spotlight.
to hold you here when you have those
Did
waves.
you guys mention
crashing behind
NBC4
you.
at all? Did we mention
We
my
mentioned it
employer?
more than enough.
Spotlight
Okay.
DC is our sponsor. Quickly, did you watch the Commanders lose?
He doesn't care.
You don't care about the Commandos?
I don't do football.
Well,
I
their
don't do-
season
I don't
here's
do-
the deal. They
I don't
were
do
in
spring
Spain.
sports.
They
just
played in
lost.
Spain, the first NFL game in Spain. The 3/4 of the game, it was as boring as it could be. It was all field goals. The who won? The other team won.
Miami.
Miami Dolphins won in overtime. The last quarter was worth watching, but it was pretty
Overtime,
hard.
that's-
But the
Man,
real
overtime,
news
that's
is,
money.
but
That's
the real
money for the
news is
network. Come on, that's
the-
great.
it was
We
not.
have JP Finley over there, the greatest sports reporter of our generation. All ears Finley is over there in Spain covering this for NBC4.
Well, here's the most important thing. That stadium, the Real Madrid soccer stadium, which is the most technologically up to date stadium in the world. The whole pitch, the whole field can be put underground, where it has grow lights and water and temperature controls. It's an extraordinary stadium. You should look it up online.
It is
Well,
a beautiful stadium.
Mayor Bowser was going to go to this game, right?
I
Remember?
asked and she didn't.
No, she definitely. She definitely. The New York Times article. She's not going to Bethesda. But she was considering going and acknowledged weeks ago that it was on her radar. She was thinking about going. Obviously, she decided not to go. And I honestly think she decided not to go prior to the New York Times
Yes.
article.
It had like 80,000 people.
It sounded really good.
I think the stadium is an insight to what we can have here when the team gets around, because they just picked that firm HKS, one of the international stadium building architectural firms, to decide or to scope what our stadium in the district is going to be.
All right. Mark, my friend, thank you for joining the Dream City podcast, supported by
you.
Spotlight DC once again.
Our foreign bureau in Calvert County.
That's right. I'll see
Hey,
you
there's
around.
news down here too. Lowest crime rate in the state of Maryland, Calvert County.
That was fun, Tom. We just had our first guest on the Dream City podcast.
And it's cool, yeah.
First guest ever. We have another guest too. We have a segment. I'm talking to my Axios DC colleague Mimi Montgomery, who wrote about what's being called Mar-A-Lago face, the changing plastic surgery habits of Washington. Uh, I guess everyone, insiders, residents, a lot of, mostly in, I would say, the conservative sphere, this is taking off. But um, here's my conversation with Mimi. Mimi Montgomery, welcome. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on. I feel so honored.
Absolutely. We're on like Zoom every day for when we do our Axios DC calls. This is
I know.
like, it seems the
Yeah.
same, it
We're just
feels the
switching
same
from
way.
one screen to another. I love it. Yeah.
Um, so you're one of the co-writers of the Axios DC newsletter.
Yeah.
You are like a rock star on the business and real estate beats.
That's right.
And I feel like you also find like the most interesting, fun feature stories going on in DC.
Oh.
Um, and you used to work for Washingtonian, right?
Yes, I was at Washingtonian before I came over to Axios, about 2 years ago, actually. Yeah.
We're so excited that you're on this podcast. And also, we're going to talk about the changing face of DC with this. You got to tell me what plastic surgery and Botox things are good because I don't know anything about this world.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I
There's
want to talk about, first off, you wrote a book.
Oh, I did. I did. I wrote a book. Yes, I wrote.
And I have a little prop here.
Oh my God.
I don't know if this is showing up, if it's flipped on the YouTube
Yeah,
viewer
no, that's
screen.
great.
It's
Wow,
like
you're
I'm
good
like
with
a late night
props.
show host. But this is
And
such an awesome cover. Tell
oh
us
my
about
gosh.
this.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I wrote a novel, a fiction novel that's coming out August 4th of next year. It's being published by Penguin Random House. It's like a quirky, weird murder mystery that has like kept me sane. The past couple years have been kind of crazy with covering the news. So this has been like some
Totally.
fun just to do in my weirdo, time by myself. But yeah, it has like a little bit of a DC connection. It's about this woman who moves from DC. She's like your stereotypical, like liberal, overeducated DC person who moves to this small town in the South and is automatically sort of like an outcast there. And everyone in the town is obsessed with their small yappy dogs. And there is a reality TV show that is being filmed about the dogs in the town called Posh.
Love
And
it.
the dog
Amazing.
walker mysteriously dies, and the woman is pinned, and chaos ensues. But
And you're
it's
from
yeah.
North Carolina, right?
Yes,
Originally.
I'm from North Carolina, and I'm from a small town. So this is definitely an exaggerated version of what I came from, but there was a little bit of inspo from
You gotta, everyone's gotta pre-order. I just pre-ordered my
Oh,
copy.
thank you.
It
Yeah,
comes
really.
out in August, but
Yes,
we gotta get the pre-orders in now.
yes. Get the pre-orders in, please. Yeah.
Okay, well, awesome. So let's talk about what is Mar-a-Lago face? What is
Yes.
going on?
A pivot from dogs to Mar-a-Lago face. So I talked to some DC plastic surgeons who said that since January they have seen an influx of Trump insiders coming to them and asking for procedures that are like in line with this Mar-a-Lago face. So I did not come up with the term Mar-a-Lago face. I think a Slate writer came up with it earlier this year, but basically
Mhm.
it's like really overt procedures so that you look like you have plastic surgery, which is not the norm typically in DC. These surgeons tell me like DC is very like buttoned up, like people don't want to look like they've had work done. But these folks are coming in and they're like, we want to look like we have had work done. And
So interesting because, yeah, like
yeah,
DC is a quiet luxury, like quiet money. Like even people with money don't flaunt it. It's not like Miami or New York, even. Like you kind of just like, if you're rich, like you have your Georgetown house or in McLean, but like you're kind of
right.
like, you don't really show it off.
Yeah, no. And what's funny is that this seems like this is kind of like in line with like Trump's overall as love of aesthetics. Like he is
Mm-hmm.
definitely like
Mm-hmm.
bigger is bolder is better kind of guy. Like think about like the Lincoln bedroom or like all the gold he's put in the Oval Office. And so it's interesting
100%.
because like I feel like this vibe is very in line with like a lot of what we're seeing coming out of like Trump's decor in the White House.
I'm just looking at the story now. One of my favorite lines is, quote, you write, and while old school belt weighters tend to be hush hush about their tune-ups, the quote Palm Beach crowd is all systems go. This is a quote from Troy Pittman, a DC area plastic surgeon who works with a lot of Trump insiders.
Yeah. So a lot of these folks are like very open about the fact that they are getting work done. They're fine with it. And what's interesting is that, some of the plastic surgeons say it's probably like a regional thing, right? So, like I said, DC tends to be button up, but a lot of these folks are coming from places like South Florida where it's pretty typical, I think, for a lot of folks to get like work done and to like want to look like they've had work done. It's just like no biggie. So like these people are coming from Palm Beach, South Florida, getting their work done here. I actually spoke with one doctor who said that she's like turning away a lot of these folks because one, it doesn't really fit with her practice's vibe, and two, she is like worried it could be dangerous because a lot of these folks like already have fillers in, have work done, and she's afraid that doing more to them could like harm them. So she's had to say no to them, which I thought was like
Right, like because like some of these doctors are turning people away.
yeah, exactly. She called it like filler blindness is the term she used, and it's like when you are surrounded by so many people that have had a lot of work done, you kind of lose sight of what like a natural, face looks like, and so you just want more and more and more done to the point where it could be dangerous sometimes, I think.
Oh dear.
Yes.
I mean, this is such an interesting story because obviously I feel like Botox and plastic surgery with TikTok is like even younger people are getting into this trend
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Um, and on this podcast, like we're just always interested in how, like the changing face of DC, how is the culture being impacted, and President Trump is having such a big influence on DC, kind of unlike presidents in the past, obviously. And this
Totally.
is just another one example of it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we've talked about this a lot at Axios DC, just like the very glam, pomp and circumstance of this administration. And I think this is just like another example of that.
100%. Um, what are you watching next on this? Do you think is there anything that
Well, actually, I want to report out a story about this, so to be determined. But one of the plastic surgeons I talked to during this story told me sort of, a little bit of a side story here. But he's seen a lot of people come in over, the past whatever have you, 10 months in this crazy, horrible economy that we're having in DC with, everyone being laid off at Doge. It's a really saturated market. People are really elbowing each other for jobs. And he's seen a lot of people come in like wanting to get tune-ups before they take their LinkedIn pictures so that they can look
Oh, no way.
yeah, super fresh and like, hireable when they're like applying for jobs in this crazy market. And so that's like something that I'm going to poke into as well. But it's like, I think it's so hard to get a job right now that people are like doing anything they can to make themselves, super valuable.
You gotta get for men especially, I've heard like the jaw
Yes. The
surgery or whatever to
jaw
make their jawline
surgery.
sharper.
Yeah, I think that's like a big look right now, and that's also what something that, surgeons told me as well is, sort of a lot of the Pete Hegseth rhetoric of, like, really traditional, like, stereotypical masculinity, like, the chiseled jaw, like, the abs, like, looking really, like, youthful and taut. That seems to be something that guys are going for right now with their work.
Oh my gosh. All right, Mimi, thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
This was so fun.
thank you so much for having me, this is awesome.
We gotta have you back.
Always.
I'll see you on Zoom tomorrow, probably.
Yep, see you
See
Monday.
ya. Well, that was great. That was a great conversation.
Yeah, I think I just won't comment on that story.
You're not going to comment on plastic surgery. All right. Well, Tom, we're thinking about next week. We might be off. It's Thanksgiving week. We're kind of, if there's big news, right?
You
That's
see
what
what the news is.
That's right. Yeah. Um, by the way, everyone, thanks for listening to us. I got a lot of good reader feedback. Tom, you got some good feedback as well. Um,
From
we
our very first podcast.
Very first podcast. Yeah, this is our second one now. We're going to have guests on. We're going to have interviews with people, leaders soon. We're all just building this out, getting the foundations laid, but we really appreciate all the warm words. I was getting coffee with a listener up in Northwest, and yeah, I turned around and I saw Councilmember Janice Lewis George was there, and we had a chat, and people appreciated that. They can pronounce my name correctly now after the podcast. So
One
that's
achievement at least.
one achievement at least. Thank you to Spotlight DC for supporting this podcast. Spotlight DC is the Capital City Fund for Investigative Journalism. Um, Tom, do you have any big plans for the week?
I do this coming up on Saturday on Capitol Hill at 7th and Pennsylvania Avenue. For the fourth year in a row, Kojo Namdi and I from the Politics Hour will be lighting the Christmas tree at 7th and Pennsylvania Avenue. Starts at 5:30 on Saturday. And this crowd, I think it's because of Kojo, no, I'm kidding, hundreds of people come. Families come. There's free hot chocolate. There's carols singing. There's just all kinds of, it's real local, hometown community stuff. It's sponsored by the Capitol Hill Business Improvement District. Fourth year in a row that we've done it, and it's fun. So come join
That's
us.
awesome. Where is it again?
7th and Pennsylvania Avenue, right near Eastern Market.
I have to say, I know some people are Grinches about it, but I love that the holidays seem to have come early this year. I say bring it on. Bring on the Christmas music, bring on the jingles, bring on everything.
Okay, as long as you don't start singing, we're in good shape.
All right. Thanks for listening or watching, everyone. Subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe where podcasts can be found. We'll see you all very soon. Thanks for listening to the Dream
Goodbye.
City podcast.